Well, good morning. It's April 21st, and we're in Moultrie, Georgia. I'm joined by Clark Duncan, our nursery manager here, and we're going to take you guys through the sowing process here at this facility. This facility grows just around 64 million seedlings, loblolly, slash, shortleaf, longleaf, and some native grasses as well. So today what we're going to do is go through seed stratification, at least the finished portion of that process. We're going to go up to our sowing warehouse and look at the sowing operations, which Clark's going to walk us through. We're going to look at the seed as it's moved from that warehouse onto the bench system, and then we're actually going to see some seedlings that have germinated recently. So Clark was generous enough to join us today to kind of guide us through that process. So Clark, what are some of your team, what are they up to today, and kind of what's the process going on at the nursery right now?
Yeah, so we're kind of full blown into the sowing process. We finished shipping a few weeks ago. That kind of overlapped for a little while, but all we're doing right now is putting the new seed into the trays and getting them out to the field. We're about 3/4 of the way through that process, so in the next few weeks we'll be finishing that up and waiting on those seedlings to germinate, and we'll see some germinated seedlings today, but that's all we're focused on right now, is getting the seed in the tray and getting it out to the field.
Yeah. So for the container facilities, which would be here in Moultrie and DeRidder, Louisiana, Camden, Alabama, and Washington, North Carolina, that process takes how long typically to get a crop sown all the way through?
Everybody's a little bit different, but here it takes us about 2 months to do our crop, just because of the sheer size that we are. But everybody, it could be anywhere from 3 weeks to, like I said, 2 months. Some guys take about 4 weeks to 5 weeks. Everybody's got different size or different amounts of sowing lines and different quantities, but most everybody's going to start about the 1st of March, second week of March, and should be done around the end of April, 1st of May.
Yeah. So. And so some of the timing that Clark and his team and Mike Cole, our container operations manager, they'll give us dates from a sales perspective to turn in different species and different volumes to help for the seed strat to be ready and species to be ready to go in sowing at different times. And so that's what we're going to go look at next, is some of the seed that's been in strat for a period of time. We're going to talk about that process and move towards sowing. So please join us as we go through the sowing process here in Moultrie, Georgia.
Hey guys, welcome to our cooler. This is our stratification room. Ben and I were just discussing kind of where we're at in the season and the processes we're going through. So I kind of want to start from the beginning, and we'll kind of go through all the different processes. But this is kind of one of the first things we have to go through to sow the crop for the year. So Ben and them have to start several months in advance of now, talking to customers and trying to figure out what we want to do for the year. All the sales guys have to get together, figure out what families we want to do for the year, how many of each species that we want to do for the year, how many different, the quantities of certain ones and things like that. So they have to start back in January, February, trying to figure out, because there's a pretty good process before getting to the sowing. We have to start in January and February and get all that ball rolling on things. So one of the after they've met with us and the customers and picked out the seed for the year, figured out what they want us to sow, and then we begin our process of getting everything ready. So that includes picking out the seed and getting it in for the processor or other nurseries, because all the seed, after it's processed, goes into a freezer where it's stored, it's dried down, and so we have to receive that in and get it ready for sowing. And so once all that seed comes to us, we start the process of soaking and a stratification period. So we take all the seed and we put it into a soak tank to get the moisture content back up into the seed. And so we do that. We put them in pillowcases and put them in soak tanks. And we soak those for 4 to 8 hours to get the water content back in there. Then we move them to plastic bags like you'll see behind me. These seed have been soaked and moved into the cooler. And then they move into here, which is, we call it a cold stratification room. So what this room's going to do is emulate the kind of natural occurrences that it would in nature, that it's got to go through to break dormancy and to germinate. So different species require different times, anywhere from 14 days into 28 days to 60 days, depending on species that we have to leave them in here to get that certain period that we need. So we'll bag them up, bring them in here. They stay in here. It's 38, 40 degrees most days. We lay them out on these shelves. They've still got moisture in the bag, and then we periodically flip these to keep the moisture even throughout the bags. Once this process is over, then they'll go to the sowing lines when they're ready. Now we kind of have to stagger these because with us it takes us 2 months to sow the crop. So for the first few months we're constantly putting in seed about every few days. That way they're not all ready at one time. We kind of know how many we can do per day, and we'll stagger it out through a few weeks so that once that period comes up we're ready to sow, well, these have the right amount of days in the stratification period for that process. So they're moved into here, like I said, left in here until that period's done with. And then before the next sowing process that we'll see here in a minute, we have to actually treat our own seed and get it ready to sow. So we do a fungicide mixture that we treat the seed with, and then just do a quick dry before they go into the seed line. And we also cut them with a red dye. I'll show you one here below. So this is our end product, this red dyed seed. So this has gone through all the way through the process, and this will be going out to the seed lines to be sown today. So we do this treatment right before we're going out to seed, so everything's been done with this one and ready to be put into the tray. Hey guys, so you're joining me here in our sowing warehouse. This is where our process of taking the seed and putting it into the trays and getting everything out in the field for germination happens. You can see behind me we have 3 identical sowing lines. This is kind of the beginning of the process. We've got a lot of motion going on, a lot of things moving around in here. But everything starts right here behind me. Our trays come in here, and you can see behind us all the soil comes in. This is how our soil comes in right here. It comes in these tall bales. They get imported in from Canada. It's a peat moss vermiculite perlite mix with a starter charge fertilizer in it. And it comes in compressed, and then we move it into these machines here where it's broken up, and then we fill the trays with that material as it moves through the line. So the next step in our process is actually filling the trays. So after all that media is dumped and broken up, we move it into this next machine, which is a tray filler machine. So that dirt is moved up a conveyor onto the top of the trays. It's broken down more, then it's dropped down on top of the trays. And there we've got a vibrator in the bottom that compacts these trays to get that soil down to the compaction that we like. It then moves next to a dibbler, and it runs through that dibbler and makes a small indentation on top of the tray to allow the seed to go to the center of the plug, and allows us some room to put a top dressing as well as it goes through. As it moves on down the line, this is the process where it actually puts the seed into the cavities. So this is a vacuum drum sower. As it rotates around, it's vacuuming up the seed on these little small needles that we have here. It rotates around, and when it lines up with the cavities and the row that it meets, a little squirt of water, they'll actually shoot the seed out and drop it right into the middle of the cavity. And as we're moving on down the line, our next part is more of a quality control area because we want to maximize space here at the nursery. So we're checking to make sure that we have a seed in every cavity, and we're making sure we don't have doubles as well. So they're checking behind to make sure that all those cells are filled. So once all the seed are in the cavity, we move on down to a top dressing machine. And basically it's just going through a waterfall of sawdust. We're just putting a light layer of sawdust on top, and then we'll move down to a water tunnel. The sawdust just allows us to cover the seed up. It helps retain moisture on top of the seed, as well as hide it from birds. The reason we use sawdust, it's just a cheaper material than having to use the soil that we get in. We get it locally sourced so we can get an abundant amount of it. The next step in our process is just a water tunnel, and this just allows us to put moisture into the tray until we can get it out and move it outside. So it moves through the water tunnel, then it's palletized and wrapped and put over here in the warehouse, and it will go out into the field within the next 24 hours. Hey guys, so you can see behind me, we're outside now. We just finished up the process of sewing in the warehouse. It was a little loud in there, so hopefully you heard everything that I said. We kind of went down the line and pretty quickly and how we get the sole into the tray, and then we move down and get the seed into the tray. Then we top dress it and get it stacked up and ready to come outside. And so once that process is done, this is where it's going to come next and stay through the entire year until it's lifted and packed in the fall or winter to go to our customers. And so behind me you can see this is a one-span pivot irrigation. Everything's set up very similar to this. Each one of these pivots behind me can hold about 4.5 million cavities. And so the trays are brought out here just like this. They're set up on a T-rail system, kind of like you would have in a greenhouse. And once the trays are brought out here, they're just taken and slidden in, and they're placed in here like that, and they'll stay here the rest of the season. We can do all our watering, all of our fertilizing through the center pivot. We do water solubles that we pump in through the middle. Then we do some foliar sprayings during the summer. So once it gets up and germinated, all summer we'll spend the next few months trying to get everything ready for October. And so we do all of our growing, and then we do some top clipping and things like that during the summer. But it's going to take us a few weeks to get up and going here. These were put out in the last week. This is some loblolly you can see behind me, so it'll take 14 to 21 days to come on out. We'll move over to some longleaf in a minute. You can see that it's already been germinated. It's been out about a month. It takes longleaf 7 to 14, sometimes 20 days to get up and going as well. But we start all the process of that with longleaf first, so we finish with our longleaf. Now we're in the middle of our loblolly, getting out the door, and we'll finish up in the next few weeks with our slash. Hey guys, I just want to quickly highlight some of the trays that we use. The machines you saw earlier allow us to adapt to several different types of trays. We're currently using 4 different types of trays in the nursery this year. They range from 3.5 inches long all the way up to 6 inches long. The 2 you see right behind me here are our main growers. Majority of our crop are grown in these 2 right here. These are proprietary to our company. They were designed by our guys and staff, as well as multiple research with our co-op and things have been done. And for us, this is one of the best trays on the market. Allows for excellent root growth, excellent dry down. And what's unique about these trays is they have ribs that run along the inside, and they drive the roots down to the drain holes, as well as there's multiple air pruning holes throughout the trays that allow us for root pruning and just excellent dry downs, and just create a really good root structure for our seedlings. This one right here is a 6-inch, and that one is mainly for our longleaf. And then the other one, which grows a lot of our slash and lob, is a 4 3/4 inch. Each one of these trays has 128 cells that are included. And so all these can fit through our different machines, get sown and brought out here to the pivot.
Well, we've had a really productive day. We've covered seed stratification. We talked about the tray types that we grow within. Clark was gracious enough to show us the entire sow process, and his team that was working on that today is really impactful and made a lot of good headway already. Clark, what percentage of the crop do you think you've sown so far?
We're probably at about 60% sown, so
we'll
got probably another good 3 weeks until we finish up.
A little bit more to go. So Clark was standing at pivot just beside us where the trays had just been sown and laid out, and so now we're in front of a pivot here where we've already got germination. This is longleaf that we're growing on this particular pivot. So we really appreciate your time. We wanted to show you kind of behind the scenes of the way the seed's selected, the way it's stratified, the way it's sown. This is just one of many nurseries where this process is undergoing at this point in time. So as always, we appreciate your time, and thank you for watching IFCO Edge.